Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.
My friends and I always tune into the Todd Levitt Law Show. Todd is entertaining, informative, and always delivers the goods.
Todd might not tell you what you want to hear, but he's going to tell you what you need to hear. And all you got to do is listen.
Hold on, Todd. Don't let go. It's time for the Todd L. Levitt Law Show.
Welcome to the Todd L. Levitt Marijuana Law Podcast. Good morning, good evening, and good night. I'm yours truly, Attorney Todd L. Levitt, broadcasting and podcasting from the Black Diamond Group mothership in a beautiful green nutrient field full of clones, and clones. No drones, no phones, just clones. Craig Russell, the muscle. The water's wet, the sky is blue, and all the listeners know that I love you, baby.
Why no clones and phone? Why no drones and phones? Why just clones?
Well, we have attorney Scott Roberts in the mothership today.
Okay. I got you.
And ScottRobertsLaw.com. Scott was on a few weeks back, and Scott is just the premier marijuana lawyer in the state of Michigan, if not in the whole Midwestern country. He's definitely at the top of the game. So we thought we'd have him back on the show. The last time he appeared, the response was huge, and he'll be here shortly.
Great information. Of course, the landscape of cannabis in Michigan has even changed just from the last time he was on to where we're at now, with all the emergency rules and all the new stuff that's going to take place. That's only the half of it. Did you hear the big news of the week so far, Todd? Did you hear that?
I did, but I just want to say before you tell us about the big news that there's no one better to be on the show here, the Todd Levitt Law Show, to help the listeners navigate, the complicated and contradictory state and federal laws that govern the production and the sale of both CBD in Michigan and other products. So I'm excited to have Scott on. What's the big news, Craig?
No, that's true. No, that's very true. And he can probably even touch on some of this big news too. Kamala Harris, who's one of the presidential candidates, wants to decriminalize and end federal prohibition of marijuana. That's one of the platforms she's running on. Wow. There's been other bills that have been introduced. I'm not sure how far they are or where they are. We'll ask Scott about that for sure. But Craig, we opened up with Saigon Kick today. Big song. You remember what year that came out?
1982.
Oh, you're 10 years off. 1992.
1992. That sounds like a song from the 80s. Nope, Love is on the way. I love that song.
1992 is when that song was released. I remember.
And the reason I'm playing that for Scott and his future bride. Scott's getting married soon, and I think he is getting married to a lovely lady, of course, and her name is Valentina, I believe. Yes. And we wish him all the best. We'll ask him about that so we can give her a big shout out. But Craig, I want to talk about the Crusher. Mountain bike race.
Oh,
the Crusher.
That was not what I thought you were going to talk about. What is the Crusher? That sounds painful.
So I'm fresh. It was painful. I'm fresh off the Crusher Extreme Mountain Bike adventure in the Upper Peninsula put on by 906 Adventure Team. Scott Boquette does a great job with 906adventureteam.com. Check it out. He does 3 races a year.
I was going to say.
Polar Roll,
Right.
the Margie Giesick,
Yep.
and now the Crusher. The Crusher, there's 2 parts to it. The first part is 225 miles, starts at 5:30 in the morning from Copper Harbor, which for those that are listening on podcast, if you look at the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, it's the furthest northwest tip peninsula in Michigan. And Steve Lato always talks about Copper Harbor.
Yeah,
So
yep.
the 225-mile race started in Copper Harbor and ended in Marquette. I did the 100-mile race, which also started at 5:30 a.m. And I was teamed up with Vinny Kate. We all know Vinny.
Oh, sure.
And Evan D. Kate. So we got Vinny Kate and Evan D. Kate.
Okay.
And we had Scott Anderson with us from Iowa. And then we teamed up with a couple people from Wisconsin, Heather and Rolf. So Wisconsin. So the group of us, the course was brutal. Started off on the trail system there in Marquette and headed up Big Bay. I don't know if you're familiar with Big Bay area, but it went through the Huron Forest up there, and we used single tracks, ORV trails, logging roads, and it went all the way north to Big Bay and then headed northwest. We ended up near Empire Mine. We were told we were in some of the most remote regions of the Upper Peninsula, and I'm going to tell you, Craig, I've never seen anything so beautiful. You would not believe what is up there in the backcountry. It's insane. Eventually, we ended up heading south back as we straddled Ishpeming and Negaunee back to Marquette. So it took our team, we started at 5:30 a.m. and we finished at 9:30 at night. So we were out there for 15 hours. And here's the thing about doing these endurance races.
Okay.
You don't have to go out and ride 100 miles every week. You don't have to, do those things. What you have to be in shape, number one. You have to know how to handle a bike. You have to have good endurance.
Right.
You have to have the right muscles for that type of riding. You have to understand how the machine works in relation to your body, like anything like a motorcycle, motocross, any machine you're operating, especially a bike. But you have to have a support team. So we had a team out there helping us out. And you have to be hydrated, you have to have electrolyte tablets, and you have to have a certain amount of calories per hour. So the way the race was set up, there were freshwater streams throughout the entire course for both the 225 racers and us 100-milers, and we were able to fill our camelbacks and our jugs back up. So it was pretty insane.
Okay, now this all makes sense. You sent me a video a couple of days ago of you guys riding through the river, and I'm like, what in the world is this all about? Now it all makes sense. Okay. You guys were like transporting through the rivers and walking through and riding through those rivers and everything. It looked gorgeous, that whole area.
Yeah, on Facebook, it's the Crusher. The video that we uploaded was our group crossing the Yellow Dog River.
Okay.
And at this time, it wasn't as deep as it was last year. Last year it was up to our knees. This year it was just above our ankles, but we had no choice but to just get in and get wet. And then we got destroyed. That was mile 67. And for the rest of the way, it was uphill, then downhill, it leveled out, and it was all sand until we hit about 97, 98 miles. But Anyhow, I just wanted to mention that you sure learn a lot about yourself. I'm 54. I don't know how much longer I can do this stuff, but you sure learn a lot about yourself when you're out there all day doing one of these adventure endurance races. It's insane. But, the cool thing was there were these 2 high school kids that were riding behind us and in front of us, and we kept running into their parents who knew the terrain really well. I mean, his parents kept showing up in some of the most remote locations throughout the course, and they were feeding us Pop-Tarts and Gatorade and beef jerky. So big shout out to, I think it was Dan Clements is his name, and his boys there. So I just want to mention that because I'm still riding high from it.
That's a big accomplishment, man. And like I said, the video you sent me in 100 miles, I mean, that's just crazy stuff. That is nuts. You know what else is crazy too? The Asaba River Canoe Marathon. Depending on when you're listening to this, it's either going on this weekend or it happened last weekend, but that thing is an endurance race as well. We know people in the race, of course, 98.5, our flagship station, not only of the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, but also the broadcast of the Asaba River Canoe Marathon. That's another different kind of endurance race all around. It starts off in Grayling and goes all the way to Oscoda. So congratulations to everyone who ran or who is running in the race, and to all the winners and everything, of course, because the station has a lot to do with it. But that's have you ever thought about doing that? Have you ever thought about doing the kayaking or the canoeing race?
No, I leave that up to Jordan Wakely, my good friend Jordan Wakely up there. Yep. So again, we're recording this before the race, so hopefully Jordan, I think last year, as we mentioned last week, I think he took first place in the pairs division. So right. I'll be pulling for Jordan Wakely. But Craig, what a huge show we have for the listeners today. I mean, we've got the premier attorney, as far as I'm concerned, as an attorney myself, in the cannabis industry with us, and we should just welcome him to the show. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a great idea. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Scott Roberts is on. Hello, Scott.
Scott.
Hey, guys.
How is everything? Back. How is everything in Scotland?
Things are busy over here, but they're going.
And was I correct? You're getting married, and your lovely bride's name is Valentina?
Yeah, I'm getting married September 1st of this year.
That's outstanding. I mean, Craig and I haven't known you long enough to be invited to the wedding, and we're not even asking, Scott, but I just want you to know that when I'm invited to a wedding at this point in my life, I give a 5-year IOU. So if my buddies stay married for 5 years, because most people my age, they're on their second and third and fourth marriages for some reason. So look, at this point, I'm on Todd's time. So I'll give you a 5-year IOU. You stay married for 5 years, turn it in, I'll give you a gift.
I'll take you up on that.
But I wish you all the best because you're a young guy. So, Scott, July 3rd, am I correct? And we've been talking a little bit about the last couple of weeks. The state put forth some of the rules and regulations of rec laws. Is that right?
Yeah, they finally got it done.
First off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your law firm, your background. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm the managing partner of Scott Roberts Law, which is a cannabis-focused business and real estate firm. We practice about 90% in the hemp and cannabis industries. And, my background is as a business and real estate lawyer before I got into the cannabis industry a couple years ago. And we're kind of taking that knowledge of business and real estate law, as well as my knowledge of, the marijuana market, and, providing legal services and kind of business consultation services to about 40, 50 cannabis companies here in Michigan.
And that involves everything from licensing to zoning to setting up corporations, negotiating contracts. I mean, it runs the gamut from A to Z. Is that fair to say that your representation involves?
Yeah. So we have 6 people on our team. We're actually about to hire one more attorney starting August 1st to be our 7th member of the team. We kind of consider ourselves a one-stop shop for cannabis business-related services. So we kind of do everything business, real estate, municipal, and compliance related. What we don't do is criminal law. We leave that for the criminal lawyers.
Such as myself. And what's your website?
ScottRobertsLaw.com.
We've got plenty of questions to ask you about stuff we've been talking about the past few weeks, but we have to take a break. On the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, we'll be back with attorney Scott Roberts when we come back. The Todd L. Levitt Law Show thanks you for listening to our podcast. If you have a business you think people would want to hear about, the Todd L. Levitt Law Show accepts advertising. We can promote your business to a very specialized, targeted audience. Any size commitment and any budget. Email toddlevittlawshow@gmail.com for more information about sponsoring and advertising on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show podcast.
Lonely sidewalks, silent night, bring the evening deep inside.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, broadcasting and podcasting right here in the Black Diamond Group Mothership. We're joined by a good friend of the show, attorney Scott Roberts, and of course Craig Russell, the Muscle. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
My first question is for the listening audience. In the state of Michigan, and you've been on to talk about this, at one point, individuals could apply for licensing under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, and now we're a recreational state. So the question is, if there is a town or township or community that has opted in and are allowing, let's say, for instance, 3 dispensaries, when those 3 dispensaries were approved, they were approved for medical. Am I correct that now those same 3 dispensaries, in order to sell to the general public 21 and over, when they're able to do so, have to now apply for a rec license?
That is correct. So, we don't call them dispensaries here in Michigan. It's a retailer if you're talking about recreational, or it's a provisioning center if you're talking about medical. But, for a medical marijuana provisioning center to sell to the general public, age 21 and up, they have to get a separate marijuana retailer license. And they are actually able to do it, we now know, out of the same facility. So if you have a dispensary in your medical and you want to get into rec, you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. You can do both. You just kind of have to subdivide the operations a little bit internally.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. What if there's a community that at this point has not opted in, but they're deciding, okay, now we're going to opt in. We see what the rules and regulations are, and in their ordinances, are they going to just specifically identify, all right, we're going to allow 3 provisioning centers for recreational purposes? I mean, do they have to identify them as both medical and recreational in the ordinances, or can they just be identified as recreational? Because obviously under recreational, medical patients can go in and still purchase products as well.
So the municipalities are going to kind of identify which one they're opting in for. You're seeing a couple that are looking to actually just kind of skip over medical and go straight to recreational. But a lot of the medical ones are probably going to be the first to kind of opt into recreational, because they've already kind of indicated that, they're in favor of this. And then a lot of them opted into medical because they got a cut of the tax money. But once the recreational law was passed, that actually went away. So now to kind of get a cut of the tax money again, they're going to have to opt into recreational. So I expect a lot of the municipalities have already opted into medical to start opting into recreational over the next few months or so.
So, Scott, now I have a question, and again, maybe we need to kind of reset back a little bit. So the last time you were on the show to now, lots has changed, has it not?
Yeah, a lot has changed. There was a lot of waiting kind of going on as everyone was eagerly anticipating the recreational regulations to come out.
Right.
And as you mentioned before, they kind of came out July 3rd of this year. And now that that's happened, all the municipalities kind of know what they're dealing with. And that was kind of the holdup before, is no one really wanted to jump into this until they knew what the rules of the road are. And now that we kind of have a better idea of what the rules of the road are, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more movement going on within the state, as far as, municipalities opting into rec, and also companies start kind of eyeing the rec market and positioning themselves for it.
And, of course, at this point now, things appear to be moving a lot quicker than they originally were. Originally, back earlier in the spring, they thought, we'd be ready to go by maybe a little after the 1st of 2020. Now it looks like by the fall some stuff is going to happen. Have you noticed that? Have you seen that happening a lot quicker?
Yeah, I think just across the board, things are moving a little quicker now than they were in kind of 2016, 2017. I remember, back in, 2017, we remember they said, we'll have the rules out that summer. And then that summer turned into that fall. And then it was October. And then I think they finally came out at the very end of November. And they kind of kept on pushing back the deadline for when they were going to come out. And, with the recreational rules, they did kind of initially say they were going to come out in June, but, July 3rd is pretty close. So I'll give them credit on that.
So my question is, are you seeing more communities now opting in?
On the recreational side, there's a lot of communities that are talking about it, but there hasn't really been much to really go forward with it officially. So, you'll have cities like Berkeley or Royal Oak, they're talking about it. They're having those conversations, but they're not ready to, adopt an ordinance quite yet. They want to kind of talk it through a little bit and kind of work out some of the details.
Of all places, I graduate from Berkeley. Berkeley Bears, Class 83. I'm happy to travel south to the great city of Berkeley, Michigan, there off of Woodward and Catalpa, and talk to those in power and get them to see the daylight, especially Royal Oak, one of the most progressive communities outside of the city of Detroit. And I'm surprised they have not yet opted in with the landscape of businesses that make up downtown Royal Oak. I'm a little shocked by that, Scott. So here's a question I often get from emailers, listeners. Is it too late for individuals who are interested in getting a license of some sort, whether it's transportation, dispensing, processing, or a combination? What would you say to those who ask me, hey, Todd, is it too late to get involved?
I don't think it's too late, but I think you also have to be a bit careful with what you're doing because, as an example, right now, if you were to be a grower and you're operating right now, you're getting $3,000 plus for a pound wholesale of marijuana, which is a great price. And if, you can make a lot of money off that price. But, if you were to start now and say, then you'll be fully operational in about a year from now, then you can't rely on the fact that it's still going to be $3,000, $3,500 a pound. As more, supply comes online, you're going to start seeing the wholesale price drop. So while there's still opportunity, it's not going to be so easy that, anyone essentially that starts up a marijuana facility can make money.
So my next question is, I got a few calls in the past week or two from listeners who are interested in doing some hemp farming, and they applied through the state of Michigan for a license to do so. And the question was, can they begin the process of farming, purchasing the seeds, and doing what farmers do prior to the state giving them the green light through their application?
They could, but it would not be recommended because it likely would not be legal. So, there are some people who are kind of getting a little ahead of themselves. But, what I would say is that the hemp licensing is very, very easy and it's very quick. So it's not going to be a situation like in marijuana where, right now, if you apply under the MMFLA, you probably have to wait, about 4 months or so to get pre-qualified. Some can go a little quicker than that, but that's the average. With the hemp licensing, there was a time when they were doing the workshops that they were actually handing them out the same day as the application. So, if that's something you're going to do, it makes a lot of sense to just do it first, especially since it's also a very, very inexpensive license. It's like a couple $100 license to cultivate hemp here in Michigan. So anyone who's listening, I would say just go ahead and apply for the license. You're going to get it very quickly. And it's not going to cost all that much, and it's just not worth the risk.
And if you need an attorney who can help you in every facet of the industry from A to Z, whether it's cannabis, licensing, hemp, be sure to call our good friend Scott Roberts, who's in the mothership today. And I'm going to give out Scott's number. Well, it's scottrobertslaw.com. So Scott Roberts with an S law.com.
Yeah, our number is 248-234-4060.
Another question I often receive at my office here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan is, has the state of Michigan set THC levels for these growers that are currently licensed to grow?
Not for flower. So, if you can grow 25%, 30% THC for flower, then, you're doing awesome. There are some THC limits with respect to edibles and concentrates. But for flower, it's, as high as you can get it, really.
Are you seeing a lot of individuals from other states seeking to, and I mean, I would think so, yes. But I'm asking for the listeners, are you seeing a lot of individuals from other states seeking to enter into our industry here?
You know, we did about a year ago or so. We still had a lot of individuals from, say, Arizona or Colorado or Oregon looking to come to Michigan. Right now, what we're seeing is actually a lot of the big companies come to Michigan.
We have to take a break on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. We've got attorney Scott Roberts on. When we come back, though, we'll kind of dive into that a little more because I have a couple of questions about some of the businesses that are coming into Michigan, and also talking about something we've talked about the past couple of weeks about these clubs where you'll be able to possibly smoke product and also potentially buy it at the same place. We wanted to kind of just continue that discussion, but we have to take a break. We'll be back with attorney Scott Roberts on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show when we come back. The Todd L. Levitt Law Show thanks you for listening to our podcast. If you have a business you think people would want to hear about, the Todd L. Levitt Law Show accepts advertising. We can promote your business to a very specialized, targeted audience. Any size commitment and any budget. Email toddlevittlawshow@gmail.com for more information about sponsoring and advertising on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show podcast.
Lonely sidewalks, silent night, bring the evening deep inside. Hold me, darling, touch me now. Let the feelings free tonight. Love is on the way. I can see it in your eyes. Let's give it one more try tonight, baby. Love is on the way. I can see it in your eyes. Let's give it one more try tonight.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. Coming back strong, Craig Russell and Scott Roberts with Saigon Kick. I thought this song was from the 80s. Craig, you're telling me Love is on the Way is from, what, 1992?
That's correct, 1992. They were
We're playing that for Scott because he's getting married in, what, September, Scott?
Yeah, September 1st.
wow.
You want to give your future bride a big shout out?
Yeah, I love you, Valentina.
Aww.
That's so sweet.
I love Craig. I tell him each and every week, but as a friend, though, Craig, strictly as a friend.
Yeah, that's what you say.
Hey, before we continue with attorney Scott Roberts here in the mothership, and we talked about the Crusher Extreme Mountain Bike Race earlier this week, I do have a quick complaint, Craig. I got to get to this complaint because it's driving me crazy, and it goes out to my best friend, Big Hair.
Here we go.
Big Hair was complaining to me this week that I hang up too quick when we're having a conversation. So Big Hair, he's one, and we talked about this in the past shows. He's one of those extremely long hanger-uppers. It takes forever. He'll say, "Okay, Todd," or Double D, whatever he calls me. "Hey, okay, Todd, listen, you have a great day, and I'll make sure that I get it." I'm already hung up. I'm already off the line at this point because it's like this. "Okay, Big Hair, I'll talk to you later today." Click, I'm gone, and he's still going through the motions. Well, his wife added up throughout a week how much time he spends on the phone talking to me when I'm already gone. 14 plus minutes of extra verbiage, guys, when I'm already hung up.
Oh, that Big Hair.
My point is, if I'm done talking, I'm hanging up. We don't have to have a long goodbye. And the other thing is, if I'm having a conversation with you, Craig or Scott, and I tell you ahead of time that I'm in an area with bad service and I might lose you, I don't feel it's necessary to have to call you back if the conversation was already completed by the time I lose you. Do you agree with me on that, guys?
No, not at all.
What do you mean, not at all?
No, you don't have to call him back. Not at all. No, I think you're completely justified. Yeah. If
I'm talking to you on the phone and I dump you, I don't have to call you back.
No,
you're not going to wonder. Okay.
No.
Okay, good.
No,
all right.
not at all.
All right. Let's not waste all the listeners' time because we have our special guest, Attorney Scott Roberts, on in the mothership. Scott, how can listeners get a hold of you again?
They can visit our website at scottrobertslaw.com, or they can call our office number at 248-234-4060.
And for those who have just tuned in, describe what kind of services your law firm provides.
Yeah, so we're a full-service cannabis business law firm. So we pretty much do everything business-related from, real estate, municipal and state licensing, leasing, contracting, the whole 9 yards. If it's business-related in the cannabis industry, we handle it.
So with the rules and regulations came out in the state of Michigan here for recreational. Can you talk a little bit about those rules?
Yeah. So, they came out. There's a couple surprises and a couple things we kind of thought were going to happen that ended up happening, and things we thought might happen that didn't happen. Two things that really kind of weren't really in the statute but ended up happening were the event license. And that's something we, as someone who actually represents a couple of event venues, or has represented some event venues in the past, prior to my marijuana days, and also one still, you can have an event license, and then that event license means you can get a temporary event license, and then you can actually have marijuana at a concert, at a festival, at Arts Beats and Eats as an example. Not to say Royal Oak will actually do that, but that's something that kind of is new. This event license. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that could also lead to a couple different business models for certain people who, instead of say trying to sell out of a storefront, could actually just kind of have events or farmers markets on a regular basis, where them and a lot of other marijuana retailers and micro businesses get together and have a marijuana themed farmers market,
or maybe even something like, say, 420 Canna Expo on the 18th of April 2020 at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort in Mount Pleasant, just to say one.
I'm just saying it's exactly what we will be undertaking at the next 420 Canna Hemp Expo next year at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. We are actually seeking an event license, Scott, to participate under the new rules and regulations that you just put forth. We're looking to do this off property in a field somewhere with music and vendors and all kinds of different things that will be taking place.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And one thing I will say is you are going to have to get Mount Pleasant's, or wherever you're going to have it, a specific approval for the location. So that's one thing to just kind of to take note. And you're also going to need to at least allow 90 days before you apply for them to process it. So hopefully you take that advice and we can make it happen next year.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be outstanding. So we've got the event license, and then we have the private, we talked about this last week, the private facilities that can, I don't know what you want to refer to them as, but consumption clubs, consumption businesses.
Yeah, we generally refer to them as cannabis lounges within our law firm, but they can kind of take many names. Some people call them coffee shops because this has been something that has been around for several decades in Amsterdam. But yeah, so the state is going to allow a designated consumption license, and what that allows you to do is, have an area where people can hang out and smoke marijuana, eat edibles, whatever the case may be, kind of similar to a bar. And you can pair that license with either a retail license, which is a dispensary license, or a micro business license. So not only can people come to enjoy the atmosphere, they can also buy your product. And that's, I think, something that's going to be very key, because if you look at some other states where they've allowed these consumption lounges but haven't allowed sales on site, these consumption lounges are very tough business unless you can actually sell marijuana. It's almost like imagining a bar that can't sell alcohol. I don't know how you make money. But now that we know that you can sell on site, either, on a neighboring facility or, it's not exactly clear how they're going to make you delineate the two. But, what we do know is that you're going to be able to do it. And, we have a lot of people interested in it. And it's something I'm really excited about because it sounds like a really cool place to be. And I hope we have some, where I live in Royal Oak or pretty close by.
And that would be a question that I'd have for you is, do you think that anyone who has a retail license isn't already going to try and get one of these consumption lounge licenses? I mean, wouldn't you, again, like you said, it's almost like a natural to go together. Who wouldn't want to do both of them at the same time? If you've already got the retail license, why wouldn't you want to apply? And how hard is it to get that consumption lounge license? Is it just as easy as getting the retail license? In other words, if you already approved for the retail license, would it be just as easy just to add that on, even if at first you didn't do it, but then you wanted to do it later?
So, I think the reason a lot of people aren't, or a lot of companies aren't, is because they don't have the space. A lot of the dispensaries here in Michigan are 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet. And, quite simply, they just don't have the space for it. If there are 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, then it'd be a lot easier to, say, carve out about 1,000 square feet for a consumption area. But, we have some clients that are operating in about, 1,200 or 1,500 square feet. And even if they wanted to do it, they just, don't really have the space for it. And as to licensing, we don't expect, recreational licensing to be as hard as medical licensing once was. Right now in the medical, the last couple licensing reports we've read, there hasn't been a denial. I think the last denial was like 3 or 4 licensing reports ago. So we're actually seeing the medical licensing get a lot easier. And, my assumption is that the recreational licensing will be very similar in that, you'll see 80-90% approval ratings for people who submit.
Why do you think the approval has gotten a lot easier? Why do you think they haven't denied as many people? Do you think it's because the knowledge is finally getting out there and people know what they're getting themselves into and know how to not, I want to say use the system, but kind of have an idea of what's going on? You don't just have rogue people coming in off the streets saying, "Hey, I want a license," and they're getting denied because they don't have a chance. Would that be fair?
No, I would say, things that were causing denials last year just aren't causing denials this year.
Oh, okay.
I think part of it was, getting rid of the licensing board. They were really kind of all over the place when it comes to some of their approvals and denials, to the point where it almost seemed like to some of us observers there wasn't much rhyme or reason to it. It was very kind of arbitrary. And also, I think a large part of it is, to give credit to our new governor, because, in the end, the governor is the one that sets the tone at LARA and MRA. And there was a certain tone set by Governor Snyder that wasn't super favorable to a lot of potential licensees, but that tone has changed. And now, you're just seeing kind of a different approach or even different philosophy to some of these licensing decisions, where, before one little small thing from the 1980s was causing people to get denied, and now it's barely even an issue.
Do you have any idea how Michigan stacks up against other states when it comes to some of these license approvals and how easy or how hard it is? If you went to Colorado and then came to Michigan, would there be a discernible difference between how people are getting approved or not approved, or what the process is?
Yeah, each state has their own process. So, Michigan, some people say our financial background's a little tougher than a lot of the other states, though we did recently just change that such that we don't require 3 years of bank statements that the state goes through. They only go through 1 year bank statement. We're probably harder than maybe a state like Oregon, but on the other hand, if you compare us to a state like California, it's almost a breeze compared to them, where they have a very, very highly regulated system. And it's, very expensive to go through the licensing process. And it's a very long, drawn out process, where here in Michigan, we're really starting to get it streamlined. And, we've had clients get pre-qualified, I believe, in less than 3 months, where, other places, in California, it can be an odyssey just to get a license.
And it's interesting because Oregon and Colorado, smaller states, Michigan, middle-sized state, California is a huge state. I wonder if the size has anything to do with that.
No, I mean, they say Michigan is going to be one of the largest markets outside California. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, I think as it currently sits, it was the second, and then Illinois kind of came in and stole our title. So I think we're the third largest recreationally legal state. But I can tell you a lot of people are eyeing the Michigan market and think the Michigan market is going to be a very important market going forward, kind of up there with California and Colorado. And I think you're going to see some, homegrown Michigan companies start expanding out of Michigan, like you've seen, Colorado and California-based companies expand out of those states.
It would be nice if some of these townships and communities would get off their you-know-whats and allow for various licenses to take place in their various communities. I mean, it doesn't seem like here to the north much has changed in the last couple of years.
Yeah, you get some people on these city councils, or there's township board of trustees that have a very, what I would call, antiquated view of marijuana. I've been to my fair share of city council meetings, from more liberal cities to less liberal cities, more kind of conservative rural cities. And, it is across the board still surprising to me, though I don't think it should be at this point, how kind of backwards some people are, or at least ignorant of marijuana that they are. We were at a town hall meeting about a year ago, and one of these people were saying how marijuana is a gateway drug, and if if you allow marijuana into the town, then it's going to lead to all these other drugs coming into the town. And you're just kind of sitting there scratching your head, because you're like, marijuana is already in here, right?
Yeah.
Marijuana is in this town.
So is everything else.
Yeah.
It's like you can either regulate and tax it and make some money off of it, or you can bury your head in the sand. But, burying your head in the sand isn't doing your town or your city any favors.
All it's going to take is one of those towns to go, hey, that town next to us has just made $300,000 in the last month on taxes for marijuana. We need to get some of that.
Here's a question, Scott, to add on to what Craig was. Sorry to interrupt you, Craig.
That's okay.
Wasn't there a provision or a regulation or a policy, I'm not sure if I'm defining it correctly, that allows for a certain number of the registered voters within these communities to get together and get enough signatures to override their local councils and township boards?
Yeah. So one of the cool things the MRTMA does, which is the rec law, is it does allow for a petition process. So if you're in a city, and one of the things we like to do is, because you can actually look at the vote totals for Prop 1 last year and see, hey, okay, in this city, 60% of the people voted for it and 40% voted against it. So if you're in one of those cities there where the voters actually voted for it, but the city council just decides they don't want to do it, you can actually bypass the city council by a petition process that then puts an ordinance on the ballot. And then if it's on the ballot, then it goes on to the next election. And then if the voters approve it, then it passes without needing the city council to get involved.
So what's the percentage of registered voters within these communities that have to sign these petitions, and where can individuals get these petitions? So let's start from the beginning. You have a listener out there who's in Houghton Lake, who's in Indian River, Petoskey, somewhere in the state of Michigan listening to the show, because we do have 20 listeners at this point. Most are Amish, but we know some others listen.
19,
exactly, 19. So where do they get the petition, and does the petition have to be a sort of petition that's required by the rules? I mean, some of these petitions, they turn in signatures, they turn out not to be valid. So what's your advice to these people, Scott?
Yeah, so, we do have a draft kind of petition package internally that we hope to use with respect to some of these cities and townships. But, there are some, rules you're going to have to comply with. So it's going to be tough for a layperson to kind of just go ahead and do it. Though I do know there's a lot of kind of marijuana activists, I guess you could call them, that are, willing to provide, these services for free or for low cost, or really just kind of help people start this process. Because, a lot of us here in Michigan are really excited about this and hope that if we get a couple of these through, then we can actually just start using the threat of a petition to get certain cities to kind of move when previously they weren't moving. So it's something that you can do. It's just, it's a little complicated. There's some legal intricacies involved. So it's something you're probably going to need help with as a layperson, but it's also something that, as a layperson with just a little bit of legal help, you can spearhead yourself. You can go get the petitions yourself, petition signatures yourself, and you can really drive the process.
And of course,
that's something your firm handles, correct?
Right.
You could assist these individuals.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done it yet. I can't recall any law firm having done it yet, but, we hope to do it soon. We're ready and willing, and we've had some discussions with people about it in some more kind of smaller rural communities where the actual amount of signatures they have to collect is literally just a few dozen.
Exactly. That's the big
wow,
thing.
This is huge,
It doesn't
Scott.
take much. Yeah, exactly.
I think this is huge for the listening audience of this show. It really is. And for residents in the state of Michigan who are controlled by the minority of these board members, it's time for the majority who overwhelmingly voted for this to get back to the grassroots and contact your law firm and get a petition together and follow the right procedures and put it on the ballot for the next election within that community.
We have to take a break on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. When we come back, we'll wrap the show up with attorney Scott Roberts here on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. We'll be right back. The Todd L. Levitt Law Show thanks you for listening to our podcast. If you have a business you think people would want to hear about, the Todd L. Levitt Law Show accepts advertising. We can promote your business to a very specialized, targeted audience. Any size commitment and any budget. Email toddlevittlawshow@gmail.com for more information about sponsoring and advertising on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show podcast.
Lonely sidewalks, silent night, bring the evening deep inside. Hold me, darling, touch me now. Let the feelings free tonight. Love is on the way. I can see it in your eyes. Let's give it one more try tonight, baby. Love is on the way. I can see it in your eyes. Let's give it one more try tonight.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. Craig, we have a huge guest, and you had a question for him?
Yeah, it's attorney Scott Roberts, scottrobertslaw.com. Hey, we've been talking about lots of cannabis business information and stuff. What about the micro business provisions that the rules have come out with? Talk a little bit about that, Scott.
Sure. So, there's about 5 or 6 takeaways we had when we were reviewing, and, some of them are good. Some of them were, I guess you could say, a little disappointing. But, some of the open questions we had, and I think we even kind of talked about some of the open questions last time I was on the show, are, now answered. So, for instance, now we can say, yes, you will be allowed to deliver. We know that, and we know how much a license is going to cost. It's going to be an $8,000 licensing fee initially. And then on renewal, it'll either be $6,000, $8,000, or $10,000, depending on how much revenue you make. We also know that, they are going to institute what I kind of call the one facility rule, meaning you can't have your retail operations separate from your cultivation and processing operations. The exception to that being the event license that they just kind of came out with. And that's going to, kind of create some issues for certain people, because a lot of the times the best retail areas aren't exactly great for cultivation, and the best cultivation areas aren't exactly great for retail. So people are going to have to try to, find a balance there between, what works best for them. And then, as we were talking about before, you're going to be able to kind of do the cannabis lounge concept with the micro business license. And that's something that I think has a lot of legs. I think, the cannabis lounge concept is tailor-made for these micro businesses, and it's going to be really exciting. We have a couple projects for these in the works, very preliminary right now. But, we hope to be involved in opening some of these early next year, and it's something, I'm very, very excited about. And then we also, found out one piece of good news is that there isn't any capitalization requirements for the micro business. So the state's not going to, require you to have a certain amount of money. One thing the state did do, however, is say, if when you retail as a micro business, you have to comply with all the retail regulations. When you cultivate, you have to comply with all the regulations that are applicable to the general, grower licenses. And that will make it a little more expensive than I think people initially realized, because, there's a lot of like fire code requirements that are, not super cheap to comply with. But, in the end, it at least saves you money. You don't have to pay a CPA to do a CPA attested statement saying you have a certain amount of money just to be able to apply. And I guess the one final thing that happened, and we were kind of expecting this, but I know it's going to be good news for some of the out-of-state listeners that we've been kind of talking to on and off, is that, Michigan isn't going to require you to be a resident for a certain amount of years. Like some other states, I think Massachusetts did it, or some state like that, where, you have to be a resident for a year or 2 years before you can actually apply, because the micro business is restricted to Michigan residents in the first 2 years. You just have to be a resident when you apply. So if you're someone, say, from Ohio, New York, or someplace like that, and this has been an opportunity you've been eyeing, then, you can move to Michigan, become a Michigan resident, and open up one of these things right away.
And of course, if you are from the state of Michigan, or maybe you're listening on the podcast and you're from somewhere else and you have any questions about any of this stuff, how do they get a hold of you, Scott? Because you do it all. Other than the criminal side, you do everything when it comes to cannabis business. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can submit to our website. We have a contact form on our website, scottrobertslaw.com. We also have another website devoted just to marijuana micro businesses, because that's something, we were really involved in and we're really kind of passionate about, and that is marijuanamicrobusinesses.com. And we just brought on a couple professional services partners there, so I want to give them some shout outs. Karina Miller with LC Solutions, Anthony Sabatella with 123 THC, and Roberta King with Canna Communications. They're going to be working with us so that we can provide the full suite of professional services to micro business owners. They're all kind of similar to me in that they're, have smaller professional services companies that, are very value-based and provide great service. And then, of course, you can always just give us a call at 248-234-4060.
Simple as that. That makes it really easy. You're the one-stop shop for everything to do with cannabis in the state of Michigan business-wise. Scott, thanks for being on the show with us. We really appreciate having you on. Of course, when we know, we'll have you back on in a couple of months when everything else changes and more stuff happens, because you are the go-to when it comes to this kind of stuff. Todd, show's over, Todd. We got to get going.
come on, Craig. Why do you always end the show? People want us to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just, rocking it, turning it, and burning it.
We can't do that.
But no, I appreciate Scott being on the show, Scott Roberts, attorney at law. Craig, I'm not just a litigator. I'm an advocator. Take us out with some Saigon Kick for Scotty and his new bride, Valentina, because love is on the way.
Love is on the way. I can see it in your eyes. Let's give it one more try tonight, baby. Love is on the way.
The Todd L. Levitt Law Show, brought to you by Chad Mallywell Drilling of Rosebush, Clark Modular Homes, your most experienced and trusted builder in Mount Pleasant, Clear Vision Windows, Siding, Roofing, and Attic Installation of Midland, Mackinac Properties and Northern Michigan Vacation Rentals, buying, selling, and renting properties in the Straits of Mackinac region since 1998, Tim's Collision Plus in Roscommon, Harrison Power Sports, Central Michigan's fastest growing full-line Arctic Cat dealer, and Dr. Robert Townsend and Denali Healthcare for your alternative healthcare needs.
Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.